I woke up in the middle of the night to what sounded like crying babies, very sad and mournful-sounding cries. My husband and I live in a small rural town, so we were confused because we don't have any children living nearby. We also checked our Ring doorbell camera and everything was fine. The crying lasted maybe 30 seconds, then it stopped. My husband and I just went back to sleep. Well, about a month later, it happened again. Crying babies, but this time it lasted longer, maybe 5 minutes. Then we heard the sound of running or moving objects. Then it stopped. We were curious but scared, so my husband decided to check around outside, but nothing unusual was found. Fast forward a few months, and it happened a third time. Crying babies for about 5 minutes, followed by movement. After the noise stopped, my husband and I got out of bed to investigate. Looking out the window, we see our neighbor's house, which is usually brightly lit at night. But that night the power was off. I said, "Well, that's odd." And we went back to bed. In the morning after, of course, not sleeping at all, we got up and went to look out the window. Our neighbor's power was on and everything looked normal. No one else in our neighborhood experiences power outages because it's too expensive and most people have their own well, septic, solar, wind, etc. And besides, we never lose power during storms. It only happens when our neighbor pays his electric bill. He's only lived there 6 months, and we've had 3 mysterious noises in the middle of the night along with 3 power outages. I'm sure it's probably nothing, but it's really weird. Megan, I'm sure it's nothing. There are no children in your neighborhood, you said. You also said that your neighbor doesn't experience power outages. But I think you might have misspoke or maybe misheard because unless you live off the grid, you get your electricity from somewhere. And if that somewhere goes down, everyone will lose power. But that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing to share a story. A story about a family who moved into a home in the countryside, a home where tragedy struck. It was here, years ago, that a mother lost her children. A fire erupted in the dead of night, consuming the house in hungry flames. But it wasn't the house that burned. It was the souls trapped inside. Now, every night, they return to the place they once called home. They walk the halls. They watch over the people living in the house. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you listen closely enough, you can hear their voices whispering. All right, here's the deal. If you've made it this far into the video, I need you to do me a favor. Just scroll down in the comments and type in the word baby. Like I said, I need you to do me a favor. Click that subscribe button. Let's move on. Our next call comes from John. This happened many years ago. My sister and I were visiting our grandparents in their farmhouse that they built in the 1970s. Being a curious kid, I was exploring the house and noticed a locked door with a big sign on it that read, "Do not open." Curiosity got the best of me, and I told my sister, "If I hear anything strange, I'll meet you back at the car." I slowly and quietly opened the door, trying my best not to make a sound. The moment that door opened, I was met with the strongest smell of stale feces and rotten meat. I screamed and ran as fast as I could out of there. Needless to say, no one was thrilled when I told them about this awful stench and the door. The mystery was never solved. John, this sounds like a good haunted house story, except for one part. People say all the time, "Oh, I smelled something terrible like dirty socks or a rotting animal or manure." I think we all know where that comes from. It's a demon trying to convince us that it's real. What's much harder to fake is the hearing of things. And you said that you heard a strong stench. That implies that other senses were involved. Smell is much trickier to fake. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible. Demons work hard, but it's a lot easier to influence what we hear. You said that you heard the stench. If you actually smelled it, though, that's much harder to fake. I want to believe you. I really do. I wish you'd given us more details. If you hadn't run away, what did you see? Did the stench appear to be coming from somewhere? What did you smell exactly? Was it human? Was it animal? I feel like you held back. And our last story comes from Tara. This happened about 5 years ago. I was living in an apartment. It was old and pretty run down. I've always felt like it was haunted. Throughout my childhood, I've experienced unexplainable things in that house, like shaking pictures, objects moving, and hearing my name called. I never paid much attention to it until my dog, who had never shown any signs of aggression or anxiety, suddenly became incredibly protective of my bedroom. If I tried to close the door, she would bark hysterically. Even if I was in the room with her, she would growl and bark at the door anytime it was closed. So I stopped closing my bedroom door and learned to accept the fact that something was watching me while I slept. Years went by and I grew older. I eventually got a boyfriend who stayed over often. He's an incredibly rational person, so he was skeptical of my paranormal theories. However, he was willing to hear me out. I was so happy that I could finally share my experiences with someone without them thinking I was crazy. One night, I was awoken by what I can only describe as the feeling of dread. I immediately turned to my boyfriend, who was laying on his side facing away from me, and said, "I feel like something's in the room with us." Before I could even finish my sentence, my dog jumped off the bed and began barking hysterically at the closet. My boyfriend and I exchanged glances, and he slowly nodded his head, motioning for me to stay put. He got out of bed and slowly opened the closet door. Nothing was there. The closet was empty. He shut the door and laid back down in bed. We both tried to fall back asleep, but we were unsuccessful. We ended up staying up talking for hours, just making conversation to distract ourselves from the silence. Finally, the sun began to come up, so we decided to get up and get ready for the day. My boyfriend had to leave early that morning, so we didn't have much time to spare. I watched him drive off, and as soon as I shut the door, I heard a bang. I shrugged it off, thinking it must have been the wind, and I headed back to bed to try to get some more sleep. That's when I noticed a small red stain on my boyfriend's pillowcase. It was in the shape of a handprint. Tara. That's quite the story. But I don't know, something about it seems off. You know, you said that your boyfriend was skeptical. You also said that he was rational. Skeptical and rational aren't the same thing. A rational person can believe in ghosts, just like a skeptical person can disbelieve in ghosts. Here's the difference, though. Rational people require evidence. Skeptical people reject evidence. Your boyfriend may be rational, but that doesn't mean he's open-minded. If he's anything like me, he would want to see that handprint. And if it were me, I would want to show it to him. But you said that he had to leave early, that you didn't have time to spare. If this handprint really freaked you out, you wouldn't be worrying about time. You'd be trying to convince him to stay, to wait until you could figure out what this meant. Also, how did the handprint get there? It was on the pillowcase. Did he leave it there accidentally? How does a ghost interact with the physical world? And if it doesn't, how did it leave a mark on the pillowcase? Finally, and this is the most important thing, what did it look like? Because you said that it looked like the imprint of a hand, but what color was it? What if I told you that demons can mimic smells, sounds, and even appearances? What if they can disguise themselves as ghosts? And what if they play upon our belief in ghosts to scare us? Look, I'm not saying that you lied. I'm not saying that you're making this up. I'm not saying that you're crazy. What I am saying is that demons are clever. They use our expectations against us. If we expect them to look like X, then they will look like X. I'm not saying that you should ignore what happened. What I am saying is that you should consider all possibilities.